Indeed, dear Prime Minister, distinguished audience, дорогі друзі, ваші високоповажності, пані і панове.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to congratulate Arseniy Yatsenyuk and his foundation Open Ukraine for the tremendous work that his foundation Open Ukraine has been doing over the last 8 years. And when yesterday, in the evening, Arseniy Yatsenyuk phoned me and invited me to say a few opening remarks at this momentous forum, I thought about the following. 8 years ago, nobody could have imagined that security would become so crucial for the existence of not just Ukraine, and that the security will be called under question in Europe and the whole world. For more than a year, Ukraine has been living against the backdrop of Crimea's annexation, against the backdrop of Russia's aggression in the east of the country. For more than a year, we have been confronted with challenges which were designed to destroy our state. I emphasize, the aggressor did not need Crimea. They possess 1/6 of the ground on the planet, and very often they cannot take good care of it, can't cope with that. But now we have new grounds to see that the aggressor needs the whole of Ukraine. They want Ukraine weak, discredited, unstable, with compromised European values and European ideas, with discredited people. But we have managed to rise up on the pro-European Maidan, and we demonstrated the best human and moral values as we carried out our revolution of dignity. More than a year ago, we rose up to defend our motherland, having no armed forces. It's not just that we did not have it, but we had an army which was in shambles because it was ruined purposefully. We had a ruined mobilization basis which was almost non-existent, with having no modern weapons because they had been sold out abroad under the orders of the then leaders of the military establishment, who had been serving directly to Russia. We had a ruined system of logistics. The army was badly clothed, badly equipped and armed, with very low morale, with very low patriotic spirit, with corrupt commanders and officers. With destroyed spirit of patriotism. And when we wanted to count the combat-ready units, we thought that only 3,000 to 5,000 troops are combat-ready. And it is against this backdrop that the people got together and rose up to defend their motherland. Ukraine saw a unique movement of volunteers. About 80% of our population found a way to support the army in one way or another. Some people sent charity SMS messages to special account of the MOD. Some volunteered to go to the armed forces. Some people abandoned everything and gave the last of what they had to provide for the army. People did whatever they possibly could, and they rallied together and they stopped the aggression. Not just stopped it in its tracks, but regained 2/3 of the occupied Donbass area. And then, fighting against our country were not just some irregular combatants, but regular troops of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. The largest and most powerful military machine on the continent, with a lot of combat experience. But Ukraine withstood even that. We stood tough because our morale was high. We managed to do this because we started to develop our military. We withstood that not least because within a very short period of time, just like before, we managed to create a very powerful pro-Ukrainian coalition. The world has changed. Ukraine has changed. Europe has changed. At the Security Forum in Munich at the beginning of 2014, Arseniy Yatsenyuk and I, together with Vitaly Klitschko, had a meeting with the majority of the foreign ministers from the EU countries. Catherine Ashton was there, Elmar Brok was there. It was a closed meeting, and I asked them directly, would there be a threat for Ukraine? Is it imminent? And if that happens, is the EU ready to apply sanctions? Most of the ministers said, we would like to support that idea, but that is impossible. The European Union has never approved a decision by consensus of 28 countries of the Union. It's very difficult to reach consensus, but still, Europe proved its viability and efficiency. And in March, by consensus of all 28 countries, the first historic decision about sanctions against Russia to defend Ukraine was taken after the annexation of Crimea. And a few days later, the General Assembly of the United Nations approved a historic decision condemning Russia as an aggressor because of Crimea's annexation. And right after I signed in Brussels the association agreement between Ukraine and the EU, just a few hours later, at the meeting of the Council of the European Union, 28 member countries put in place a new package of decisions in relation to Russia's aggression against Ukraine. This means that the world is trying hard to find new ways and means to ensure security in the world. Why do we need these new forms? And why the discussion which we have to carry out here within Security Forum Open Ukraine is so important? The answer is very simple. The old forms and modalities of security, which were developed right after the Second World War, are no longer operating. At that time, the mechanism of the UN was developed but when one of the members of the Security Council of the EU is an aggressor, this mechanism is unworkable because this aggressor can block any decision of this body, which had been efficient before. And it is for this reason that I rose the issue to put on the agenda of the Council of the EU the issue of peacekeepers to be deployed in Ukraine. This is a litmus test to show the world who really seeks peace and who wants war. Apart from that, the developments after the signing of the Minsk agreements proves that we need an effective implementation mechanism for the Minsk agreements. Because a piece of paper and a signature under it no longer work. irrespective of the fact that Ukraine is unswervingly keeping to each clause of the agreement. I'd like to re-emphasize, a year ago, right after I was elected president, I suggested a peace plan. This is a proof of the fact that Ukraine has never wanted war, and that Ukraine has never said that we will try to solve any conflict by military means. We suggested clear-cut points of peace plan on the 5th of September, when basically almost nobody believed that that could be possible, following a very difficult for Russia and a very hopeful for us discussion at the summit of NATO on the 5th of September. This plan was endorsed in the form of the Minsk Protocol.
Right after that, the peace plan, the peace protocol was endorsed and approved by the Security Council of the United Nations, the majority of world countries, as the only possible way to achieve peace. And from the very beginning, we saw who does not need any peace. On the 19th of March, the peace memorandum was signed. And again, the world got a new chance. But that chance was shut down by an aggressor. For the third attempt, all countries of the world pulled their efforts together, and it was demonstrated in the United Nations organization in Brisbane. In all the meetings of world leaders, they all demonstrated the solidarity with our country. And after 18 hours of exhausting negotiations in Minsk on the 12th of February this year, Minsk II document was signed. Again, very clear positions, very clear-cut clauses of our goal: ceasefire, liberation of hostages, which were illegally kept by Russia and pro-Russian militants. Captain Savchenko, who protected her land, and she was seized, and she is kept as a hostage without any accusations in Russia, though the Russia which has the status of a member of the Security Council of the United Nations. Very simple position, which from the very beginning was declared and stated by Ukraine. We do not have internal conflicts, domestic conflicts, quite the opposite. In the face of this threat of external aggression, we united as a nation. Do you remember what was the main problem for us? The language issue. Pretty often this language conflict, quotes and quotes, was presented as the only problem which we had in our country. What is this factor now? This is the uniting factor. It unites our nation and our people. And Russian-speaking Ukrainians, with their arms in hands, protect their motherland, their Ukraine, and they are the same citizens as those who speak Ukrainian. And I do all I can so that neither language, nor religion, nor land, nor any other issue is used to destruct Ukraine, to split Ukraine. That is why you can find one more component in our peace plan, a component, the factor of borderline. and our bodyguards who protect our country with their lives. 63 of them lost their lives in protecting our country. The key issue of this peace plan is the borderline. Close the border and withdraw your troops from the territory of Ukraine and take away your mercenaries. And when somebody tried to persuade the world that there are no Russian troops on the territory of Ukraine, we got the facts, the proofs of this, and the reaction of Russia was quite demonstrative. First, they said they are not Russians. On the second day, they said this is so-called militia by Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic. Then they said, well, they are Russians, but they are not servicemen. Then they said they are Russian servicemen, but they left our armed forces. Then they said that they resigned, but they just bought their arms in the nearby shop, and they just came to Ukraine on their own will. And only after the consul of Russian Federation got the clear evidence that these are regular Russian troops, regular formations of Russian armed forces, they had to admit it. So then the question arises, what do they do on our territory? What are the mechanisms to protect their country, which back in 1994 signed a Budapest Memorandum and supported the program of non-proliferation of nuclear armaments, which is the key element of peace. Because what we witness today is not a success of non-proliferation program, because Ukraine protects not only its own independence, its own sovereignty. It protects freedom, liberty, democracy, European values. Can we rely on our partners? So far, I can say, as a Ukrainian president, I feel satisfied with the level of dialogue, with the level of support and assistance, with those plans which are provided by our partners, which means that our partners will help us not only through sanctions, not through economic support, which is to be provided to Ukraine to restore our country when 25% of our industrial resources were either shut down or destroyed fully in the east of our country. And sometimes there were cases when equipment of our industrial enterprises were brought to Russian Federation. From the very beginning, they were talking about the protection of Russian language population. But the result of this protection is numerous tragic deaths of people living in the East. And then they just lost their jobs. So what we are supposed to do? We have to bring Russia to the round table of discussions, of negotiations. We should achieve the withdrawal of their troops. We should achieve the closure of our borderline. And this can be achieved in many respects with the support of peacekeeping forces of European Union. And that's why we so need this discussion. We need the discussion, the negotiations. We need coordination to start to launch political process, because terrorists, as we call them, or field commanders of these militants, as they call themselves, who kept our territory. They cannot represent Donbas. We have to provide free and transparent demonstration of people's will, and we are ready to maintain dialogue with Donbas, with Ukrainian Donbas. After fair and free elections, we will proceed with decentralization of our country. We will proceed with the efficient reforms to provide economic growth. Next year, we'll be very resolute in our struggle against corruption. We will create independent judiciary which will protect violated rights of our citizens. We will work against oligarchs in this country. We will demonopolize this country. We will deregularize investment climate. We will build free, independent country with good prospects of European Union membership, which will meet the criteria which are necessary for any EU member. I'm sure of this. And we rejected this shameful status of non-bloc country. And now we have to pay the price for what was done in the previous years. We will build our country together with our partners, together with our people. Glory to Ukraine.